Most of us never learned how to train our brains, which is why most of us needlessly settle, struggle, and worse, suffer. My name is Chris Doris, and I want to make brain training mainstream. This is my series, Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. I'm interviewing badasses from all walks of life on what mental toughness means to them and their unique approaches to strengthening their minds. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Tough Talks, Conversations on Mental Toughness. And as a reminder for the folks, for the veteran listeners and viewers out there, as well as for new folks just getting turned on to the Tough Talks series, I'll take a second to remind you why I'm even doing this. And the thought behind it and the intention is simple. And it's that, we haven't been taught. None of us had, presumably none of us, have ever had any real formal education on how to strengthen the way that we use our minds. We didn't have a class in grade school, nonetheless graduate school, in high school, in college, anywhere, at any level, on how formally to strengthen the way that we use our minds. And as Buddha says, the mind is the forerunner of all things. Our lives unfold according to the way that we think, and we didn't have any formal training on thinking, on how to strengthen the way that we think, on strengthening the way that we interpret reality, right? And yet we go through life, and we are educated profoundly and unconsciously. We're conditioned to adopt beliefs, some that serve us and many that don't. And so many that don't influence what we go for, and more importantly, what we don't go for. And therefore, I'm really excited to be interviewing folks from all different walks of life, right? People who have created excellence, people who serve, people who interface with the world in ways that do involve mental toughness, and the people who they serve, have profound stories on how their lives, on how they settle, struggle, or even suffer for lack of mental toughness. So I'm really excited, about this project, and I hope that you're enjoying it. And that being said, I'm really, really excited to bring to you today our guest, Julie Bauke. And Julie and I are going to have a conversation specifically around mental toughness for folks that may be in the inquiry. Is there something better for me career-wise? So Julie is a graduate of Purdue, who I'm expecting to be pretty tough in the tournament next month, in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. You got your Bachelor's of Science in Human Resources from Purdue, and then you went to Loyola, for your master's. Mm-hmm. And so you're formerly of the human resources world, and now you are the Chief Strategic Career Advisor at the Bauke Group, which is based in Cincinnati, Ohio. And you are coming to us today from lovely Palm Springs or Palm Desert?
Palm Springs.
Palm Springs. I suspect it's just a skosh warmer there than home?
Just a tad. I'm happy to be here for many reasons.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. And on your LinkedIn profile, it says that you are, actually on your website as well, it says you are a fierce partner for career transitioning leaders. A fierce, and I love that, and I can validate that. A fierce partner for career transitioning leaders. Now, let me just say something about that before we dive in. That if you're listening, you don't need to be in a leadership role. You don't even need to be in a transition in order to get value out of the conversation that we're about to have. Now, if you happen to be a leader in a transition role, then pay close attention, because this is going to be really, truly valuable. But regardless of that, if you are a person who is in that inquiry that I mentioned a moment ago, which is the inquiry, is there something potentially better for me career-wise, then really dial in, because this is really for you. So thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for making time for us today.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled to be here to share and serve some of the things I've learned in a lifelong career, really, or study of kind of people and work.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate that. So let's start off with this. Why don't you tell us, speaking of work, why don't you tell us a little bit about yours? What is it? So really the first two questions that I have for you are, what do you do? What is it? What is that service that you bring? And then the second, we'll get to it, is why? Of all the things, of all the ways that you could choose to use this miraculous life of yours, why this? So let's start. Tell us a little bit about What do you bring? What's your service?
We help people see their own possibilities. And I think as humans, we aren't necessarily good at seeing beyond where we are, what we could do. And we help people get very clear on who they are professionally, and then help them see their possibilities, decide which possibilities they wish to pursue, and then put together a plan to get it. And this all comes from the first half of my career was in human resources for big companies and a medium-sized company as well. And what I saw was that human beings, regardless of profession or industry or lots of other factors that we think make us unique, all really struggle with the same things. And I became fascinated or perplexed maybe by the number of people of all sorts who were willing to settle for jobs that made them at the worst absolutely miserable, and at best feeling kind of and I saw it everywhere. And that became my sort of the question of my professional life. Professionally, and then I said, you know what, I need to do something about this. And so we really work on helping people see possibilities, see their possibilities beyond where they are. And boy, oh boy, we can really, when it comes to work and jobs, we are master settlers as human beings.
I love that so much. I have so many questions. Like, wow, so that struck you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. Struck you in a significant enough way to have you choose to change your trajectory, so you're committed to addressing that, right?
Yeah. In human resources, you have all these people come in complaining. And I always wanted to say, you know what? It is obvious you are miserable. Tell me again why you're still here. But in human resources, as an agent of the company, you can't say that.
Oh,
but
how
I
interesting.
I wanted to, right? I wanted to say,
so you're biting your tongue.
Open, honey. Yeah, you don't, but you're obviously so miserable.
Hold
you're
on.
not doing anyone any good, least of all you and your family, for staying here and living in misery.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, that's so interesting. I don't know a whole ton about human resources, but what you said is really compelling to me.
Yeah.
So because I guess so as a human resources person, your job is why couldn't you say that?
Well, because then it becomes, Julie told me I should quit. Are you telling me I'm about to get fired? It becomes, HR is a tough role because you really are trying to walk that line, and some do it better than others. But when people come to you and they're complaining about these tiny little things that aren't the real issue, it's like, wow, wait a minute. Okay. So this tiny little what's in the vending machine is really wrecking your day. Back then we had vending machines, and you think, wow, there's got to be something bigger here. Yeah. And I just never understood why people choose to be miserable, because it really is a choice.
So that's huge. Now, it was several years ago. So I have a morning ritual where we all do, but part of my morning ritual, of course, is going out front. I still get an actual newspaper.
Me too. Love it.
Right on. And I get it primarily because, I love my morning routine that includes the newspaper, the sports section, and the Sudoku puzzles. But there's rarely anything inspiring in the paper. But I noticed, so I come in back, go into the driveway, I come back into the garage, I throw away the parts of the paper that I'm not interested in into the recycling bin, and then I go inside. But I got captivated. I got stuck right there in the garage one day. On the front page of one of the sections was an article on some research that had been conducted by the Gallup industry. And you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about it, but I know you know what I'm talking about. On job satisfaction, right? And in America, right? And I'd be interested in knowing what it is like in the rest of the world. But a survey on job satisfaction with Americans, and the results have been the same for 30 years. And I've done several blog posts and writing pieces on this, so some of the people that have been following, my work know where I'm going with this too, and the results are astounding. Around 80% and more, 80 and 85% of Americans report disliking their jobs.
Yes, or
it blew my mind. I was frozen.
Yeah.
When I looked at that, I thought, holy shit. And I thought, wait a minute, how do you interpret that? What is that data saying, right? And so what is it saying? What to you? What's that? What does? And it's been that way for 30 years. The results have been the same for 3 decades. So what is that telling us?
Well, there's so many culprits. If you really unpack that number, there's so many reasons why it's there. First of all, our education system is set up in a way that doesn't. You think of, okay, so boomers, of which I am one. Back in the day, you took your first job and you assumed that everybody around you who was older, had a bigger, better title, had been there longer, knew you and what you wanted, and were good at better than you did. That's the old model of succession planning, like moving the pieces on a chessboard. I'm going to move you here and you here. Never in that conversation was, what do you want? It was all about, we know what's best, right? And so the whole model of work back in the day was about you got a job, you kept your mouth shut, and you just did it, and you found your satisfaction outside of work. And there's still boomers in the market working who still believe that way and are imparting that quote unquote wisdom to their offspring. And so that's part of it. But then you've got colleges who frankly do not do a good job of teaching this. Think about the college model. They bring employers to campus to talk to you. That's not real. That doesn't happen in the real world. So what happens is you as a young adult believe that jobs are going to come to you. And so, but you think, so college placement offices are judged in a lot of cases based on their numbers. How many kids have jobs when they graduate? It's not, and that's really a false number. And they're using that number to help bring people in at the freshman level. Right? 80% of our students have jobs, and parents are like, yeah, that's what we want. That's what I'm all about. Yeah. And so it's a false sort of it's a false dynamic. And so I'm not surprised that every semester we put thousands and thousands of young adults out in the job market who either they might have a job that they might decide 6 months later they don't like, and now what? Okay, I'm just going to go online. 10 to 12% of people get their jobs online. They don't know how to, A, figure out what the best job is for them, and B, find it. Those are the two pieces of it. And so it's not going to get better. However, the good news is the millennials are more insistent on finding work that matters. So what I always say is I'll say, well, boomers, we hear exactly the same thing from boomers as we do from millennials. I want my work to matter. And I want more. I want something different. I want my work to matter. Well, that's exactly the stuff millennials are saying. So I always say that as boomers, we don't think they've suffered enough. We're just pissed off that they haven't suffered enough, right? Yeah. It's like, well, how dare you?
You haven't paid your dues, your suffering dues.
Right. So we think you've got to suffer for 20 years or more, then you're allowed to find meaningful work. Well, that's what got us in this mess to start with. So to some extent, the millennials, their immaturity, I think some of them go about it the wrong way, but they are less willing to do what they're told career-wise. And that unsettles us who are somewhat older than that.
How very fascinating. You've given me a thought now. You've inspired a thought that's new for me. And it's purely hypothetical, so we don't need to get into it, but it is interesting enough to at least mention, which is that perhaps the millennials are representing for us or illustrating for us our collective evolution.
I think they are.
Right? Our psychological evolution. That as humans, we're becoming impatient. I hope this is true. This is just a new thought, and it'll be fun to explore later. That as humans, we are growing impatient with unnecessary settling, struggling, and suffering.
Yes.
That's interesting. I'm going to do a blog on that.
In all the little parts of our life, waiting in line, just everything. And we're starting to feel it career-wise. Here's the problem, though. We don't know what to do with that feeling. We don't know how to act. So we say things like, I don't know what I want to do, but I know it's not this. Yeah,
okay. So that takes us back to something that you said earlier that I feel very strongly about. And I criticize, historically, high school guidance counselors. For not having asked the question that you mentioned a minute ago, which is when you were talking about boomers. What would you really like? What do you want?
Yeah.
Let's explore that for a minute. Let's put aside what you think, right? Let's put aside what you think's available. Let's put aside what you think is possible. Let's put aside what you think is realistic, and let's put aside what you think is practical. All of that, for a very practical reason, let's put that all aside, because it's a distraction from answering the question clearly, what do you really want? Because the answer to the question for an adult, what do you really want, has already been convoluted by all that crap. By what we've learned is available. Right? There are books that, like, I remember in college, in the career development office. There are books, big, huge tomes, right? And they slap them down and they say, have a look at that. And this is what, you know what they're called? They're called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. And another one is, which is even more scary, is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And they say, here, have a look at these. And then they have you take the strong interest inventory. You sit at a computer and you answer all these questions.
I need to be a forest ranger.
There you go.
Bus driver or forest ranger comes up for everybody. I swear.
And right. And so you get a printout, and it tells you based on, bullshit logarithm on, what you might consider being. What you might consider doing with your whole life.
And this old model of being in the same job for 30 to 40 years, it was bad then. It's not, it never made sense. It led to a lot of early death, a lot of health problems, a lot of relationship problems, a lot of other stuff, because you learn to do what the boss says, and you learn not to argue, because the goal was to get to the gold watch. And so original thinking around maybe I might want to do this was stifled. And so imagine if when you were in college, and you're younger than I am, but I would say when I was in college, if you said to your parents, to a high school guidance counselor, or to a college guidance counselor, I'd like to have my own business. I'm going to major in entrepreneurship. We would have been laughed at, because there was a path that you followed. Get that first job with a big company and do whatever it takes, including sell your soul, to stay there for 30 or 40 years. Why would you leave? And then people who would have left, they were so discouraged by all these forces from people around us, or society, I know it went off, that they just kept putting their head down and marching forward. But these kids now, your typical an 18-year-old, the job that a lot of them are going to have, the jobs haven't even been created yet. They aren't even out there yet. Like imagine, some of the, so imagine the pace of technology. There are going to be jobs available that exist in 5, 10, 15, 20 years that we can't even imagine today. I mean, think about it.
Sure.
I know somebody who knows this guy somewhere in Scandinavia. His job is to disable drones in flight. So he's hired by the Masters tournament, by places all around the world to come in and disable drones. Now, what?
Wow. Yeah.
So,
right. Like over prisons.
Stuff.
Like over prisons, so they can't carry contraband. How interesting.
Yeah. So, the stuff that we can't even imagine what the world's going to look like. And so the need to be agile and to, not get locked into one lane, like say, stay in your lane, and to believe, and this is where it gets to a lot of times, is we don't believe that we can have what we want, either because we don't think we deserve it, or we don't know, we're so bad at seeing our own possibilities. You know how it is. I mean, that first thought is, I can't do that. Who'd hire me to do that? That's for other people, not me. How would I even do that? So the cycle of head talk just continues.
Well, okay, so this is the perfect segue into this whole thing. The reason we're having this conversation is that we're serving the listeners right now by discussing how does mental toughness play a role in the evolution, the creation and evolution of your vocation. And I like to say that word. Okay, I love the word vocation, and I hate the word vacation. I don't use it. I use holiday instead. And I prefer to use the word vocation over job, because the distinction for me is that job doesn't imply passion. Job doesn't imply meaning and reward, right? Other than financially. It's more a survival term for me. This is my connotation. Vocation implies to me something much more significant, right?
Yeah.
And when excuse me, and when we get to the end of our lives, we're going to want to know, if we have the luxury of looking back on our lives before we die and asking ourselves the question, how did I do there? How did I use it? Right? I want to know that I used it in a profound way, because what the coolest course that I had in graduate school was on death, and part of the class we studied the opinions of centenarians who did have the opportunity to look back, right? To look back on their lives and answer the question, what would you do different? And I'm really interested in hearing these people's responses, because when mortality has a way of clearing all the bullshit.
It does, yeah.
Right? So, 3 of the most popular responses were, I would take more risks, I would slow down and appreciate how magical and beautiful life is without me having to touch it, just experience it. And and this is interesting, I would be far less concerned with my own success and way more committed and interested in my legacy, making an impact, making a difference. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So let's talk about mental toughness here. We
Let
are talking.
Let me add something to your differentiation between job and vocation that I think is also really important.
Okay.
Is that job implies a seat at a desk at a company, a given company. So my job at the ABC company is this. Vocation is something you take with you, right? So your vocation, you can take it from job to job. And so vocation is more about who you are as a person, and it doesn't necessarily have to do with being paid for it. So when people get laid off, here's a great example, and some of your listeners will say, you know what, I've been laid off, it sucked. On Friday, and here's one of the first mental toughness tips I would give somebody, is if you get laid off on Friday, on Monday, you are the same person with the same skills and the same abilities. You are a collection of everything you've done. The only difference on Monday is, and it's a big difference, I get it, is that on Monday nobody's paying you for it, but you still have it. So you have to figure out a way to take who you are forward to the next thing, to get paid for it, to do what you want to do. But the only thing you leave behind when you get laid off is those dusty notebooks on the shelves.
Wow, that's such a huge distinction.
It is.
Well, no, that is huge, right? Because that is really like the distinction between, you could say this, I don't feel like this is very much of a stretch, victim and owner.
Yes.
Right?
Big time.
Right?
Yep.
Right? Like the owner, or you could say follower or creator.
Yeah.
Right? This is so great. Thank you so much, Julie, for all this wisdom. This is beautiful. You could say that by virtue of the fact that we weren't asked the questions over and over and over again, or even just the one question, what do you want? What do you want? Like when you're in high school, Julie, what do you want? What do you fantasize? What would be amazing for you?
Yeah.
Like if you could get paid, I wish I was asked this question when I was a teenager. Hey, if you could make a phenomenal living, right, doing anything that you want, what would that be? And let's just go ahead and start exploring that, right? I do believe that inherent within our passions are the mechanics for all kinds of success.
The mechanics, that's right.
Yeah, but we haven't had that, right? So you said that we haven't been asked those questions. So therefore, 80-something%, right, of Americans at least are settling because of beliefs.
Beliefs, yeah.
So your job, really your vocation, involves a lot of mental coaching.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. If I believe in you, that's great, but I can't go out and help you with your career, or I can't do it for you. And so this is one of those things that we explain to people is you can't outsource it. Your career happiness is yours to find and get and keep. We mere mortals don't have agents. I can't go represent you out there. And so for you to go out and talk to people about opportunities and explore different paths and really grab it, you have to believe that you deserve it, that you're worthy of it, and that you can have it. From that, you can build a plan.
Would you repeat that for me?
Yeah. Because it can't be done for you,
Yeah.
you have to believe that you deserve it, you're worthy of it, and you can have it. And from that, that's the foundation. And from that, you can form a plan to get it. But without that foundation, you're not going to show up powerfully when you're out talking to people or networking or interviewing. And believe me, that stinks. People can smell that on you, and you won't get.
So this conversation is unfolding so fluidly. I had a conversation with our friend, the person that is responsible for our introduction.
Yes.
This morning, Nick Murphy. And we were talking about you. I told him that we're going to have our interview in a few minutes. And he asked me to ask you this.
Uh-oh. Oh, come on.
It's okay. I think you're going to like it.
Okay.
He said, please elaborate, and I think you already are. You are, but please elaborate some more on this. This is your mantra.
Okay.
Smash the box, build your own.
Right.
What does that mean?
Yeah. We think inside of a box. We think that, it's like you said, we think our options are limited to what's in the dictionary of occupational titles.
Yeah.
And so we think about, the box on the org chart. We're all familiar with a little org chart with all the little boxes, right? And we look at those boxes and we say, I need to fit in one of those boxes. So we give power to those boxes that they don't deserve, because some mere mortal drew that org chart. And that person is no smarter than you are about what the organization needs. And so when we're creating opportunity for ourselves, and I say that because that is a mindset shift in and of itself, is when we are talking to organizations, we can create opportunity by saying, based on what I read, based on what we've talked about, based on what you've told me, here are the set of needs that I hear you say that are not being met. What if I fulfilled a role that looked like this? Instead of trying to fit square pegs into square holes, you say, you know what, here's the kind of hole I think you need, and here's why I think I'm a good fit for it. And so it's instead of going in and trying to fit in what they think they need, give them some options that begin with what you bring to the table, matching up what you bring to the table, and you can hit out of the park every time, with what your research and your conversation shows that they need. That's where you see people start to get excited about having you on the team. Not like, well, look at this job description here. Look at me, I can do all of these things. That might be a starting point for the conversation, but you have to go beyond that, because those boxes really are arbitrary and not well thought out. I mean, if you go through a job search and you think that organizations have given much thought to what they need, that they are all wise and all knowing, that's a hole that's very easy to fall into and hard to get out of.
And I am sure that so many people have spent their entire lives in that, all right? Just operating from the assumption that this is how it is, and not activating creative genius to say, how else could it be? Wow, again, we're coming back to possibilities and creating, thinking bigger. So that's smashing the box, the job title, the job role box within an organization, and on a bigger scale, it's like smash the box of the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, smash the box of the Occupational Outlook Handbook, and start with, what do you want?
Yeah.
So let's get some advice from you. Can you give? So if you had one, just one, okay, like what would be one of the biggest, or the biggest, if you have one, piece of advice that you would give a human being right now who has been asking themselves the question, and this is, if statistics and data are accurate, 8 out of 10 people asking themselves the question, is there something better for me career-wise? What do you want to tell them?
There's some of our best questions are People always say, well, what kind of assessments do you use? I said, we use them if necessary, but I think some really good questions to ask, and here's my simplest one. Get out a piece of paper or whatever, however you write things, and make a list. What do I want more of? What do I want less of? And what do I never want again? And you can use your history up to this moment to drive that. So in other words, think back to your best experiences, your best jobs, your best whatever it is. Think about everything that's brought you to this moment, and what from your past do you want more of? What do you want less of? You know, and what do you never want to do again? And if you simply start it that way, instead of saying what's the best job you've ever had, that's not a great way to look at it, because that then requires that you go recreate that box. Right. But instead you go back to every job you've ever had, and it could not just be, maybe it's not even paid jobs, maybe it's volunteer or community activities. What were the things that, man, if I could have a job that allowed me to do more of this, and if I could just sort of minimize, let's say, detail work, your paperwork, whatever it is for you, and then I never want to work in, and generally these conversations are culture. I never want to work in an environment again where there's so much micromanagement that any creative idea is smashed. You know, that's just an example. What you start to develop from that is a framework for your ideal situation. And that's what you have to start with. Okay. It's very hard to start with a blank piece of paper. So more of, less of, never again is a great way to to juice up your thinking.
More of, less of, never again. Okay, so now so I took your advice and I did that. I sat down and I got my more of, less of, and never again. Yep. Okay, now I'm looking at it, and I'm just challenging you now. No, I'm not even challenging you. I'm sure you come up against this all the time. This is not a challenge. This would be me being maybe 8 of the 10 people, right, who are settling. And I go, okay, well, I've got that. I don't believe that that's available. I don't know where I can find that.
Yeah.
This feels like a, pie in the sky kind of whimsical exercise here. What now?
I would advise, okay, so we're assuming this is just somebody who's not our client, but just somebody who's listening. Sit down with your toughest friend and have them challenge your thinking.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah. You know that person who doesn't just commiserate when you're complaining, but that person who doesn't let you get away with commiserating?
The fierce one. Sit down
with them. Yeah, and say,
right.
Walk me through this, talk me through this, because my guess is the things that are on everybody's list are so doable. Like, it might be something like, I want more direct customer contact. I don't want to be in a back room. I want to be out there engaging with the customer. Or I want less travel, because I have little babies now. And so when you start breaking it down by like factors in jobs and conditions, and have somebody sit down and say, you know what, I'm getting stuck. Help me through this. Talk me through this. And help me be creative about how I might get there. Because we are so trapped between our ears. And I have a book called Stop Peeing on Your Shoes, Avoiding the 7 Mistakes That Screw Up Your Job Search. And one of the 7 mistakes.
Of course you do.
Yeah, of course I do. One of the 7 mistakes that people make is not managing between your ears. Not managing between your ears. That our self-management through this process, if you catch yourself yes-butting all day long, you've got to bring somebody on board. And so find somebody, maybe if you can't afford a coach, bring somebody on board who's a friend or some other people, a few other people that are in the same position you are, and just say, I want you to challenge the crap out of me, and I'm going to do that to you. Ask me why not? Why can't you have that? And you've got to do it a little bit at a time, but for a lot of people, they're so far immersed in negativity, they can't pull themselves out.
That's such a brilliant piece of advice right there, is to not trust your own damn thinking.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And to go solicit the input. If you, like you said, if you don't have a coach, get one.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, use one of your friends, like you said, who's bold enough and loves you big enough to call out the bullshit that you happen to be believing in this moment.
Right.
That's
right.
so great. I love that so much. Now let me ask you this. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I have a 25-year-old son
Yeah.
who had a 3-year career in investment banking until it about killed him. And his passion was producing music. EDM, electronic dance music, that's not of our generation.
Right.
But he apparently...
Yeah, thanks for spelling out what EDM stood for, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
Thank you for that.
Apparently he is very good at it. And he's, starting to get a little bit of traction. But I said to him, and he tends to be a little bit of a self-doubter, just a little bit. And I said, you need to wake up every morning and you need to look in the mirror and you need to say, why not me?
Why not me?
Why not me? Why not me? Calvin Harris, who's a guy who does that successfully, was just little Cal Harris before he became Calvin Harris. Why not me?
Yeah.
Why not me? Why somebody else and not me? And I said, you need to look in the mirror and you need to say that. Now you have to combine that with hard work, developing your expertise, blah, blah, blah. But if you are doing all of the tactical work in the framework of why not me, you can't lose.
Yeah. Well, here's one more question for you. Have you ever had anyone come to you with what seemed like an absurd shift? Like, for example, somebody that was spent their entire career in maybe in the accounting department, and then they said, "I'm just so bored. I'm so tired of it. I would love to open up a cigar bar in Key West."
Mm-hmm.
How do you respond? Yeah, you have had that kind of dramatic shift?
Yeah, it actually is, most people just want to do a slight pivot.
Okay.
So they might be an accountant working in an accounting firm, but they have a passion for the arts, but they don't have a talent for the arts. And so what they do is they go pursue an accounting career inside of an arts organization.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So they're closer to it.
Yeah.
They get their whistle wet.
Yeah.
But they're still being paid, maybe as much as they were close, but their whole life picture. So you can't look at your career as just one, it's just, when we look at our whole life picture, you can't compartmentalize because you'll go nuts. It's hard. It's mentally tough to compartmentalize. And so if you can get your needs met, if you can get your need for creativity met by working inside of an organization where you get exposure to artists and you get to walk among beautiful paintings, that can be enough for you. I did have a client one time who was a bank president, a regional bank president, who had developed through his travel, a passion for wine, and opened up what he did was, while he was still bank president, he had a partner. And he and the partner worked on the side with opening up their first wine store. This is before wine stores were everywhere. Yeah. And they started building it on the side. Then when he got laid off, he's like, I'm all in. He's on. He was all in because he had, and it's that side hustle thing, right? So, a lot of times we think, I can't do that, but I think challenging yourself and saying, can I never do that? Or can I not just do it right now? Because I've got 2 kids in college.
Right.
And so you want to think just beyond your next move. You want to think in 5 years, my life will be different because the twins will be out of college, or the kids will be driving, or, my parents will probably both have passed away. And so my needs there will change. And so I really advise, one of the ways, just another, I think, piece of wisdom I really want to serve your listeners with is, it may be a not now, it may be not right now, and because of life's complications and requirements on us, not right now is not the same thing as never.
Yeah, that's great.
And so don't say in 5 years I want to be doing this, and then wait 4 years and 364 days to think about it again.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, I love that. So one of my favorite mantras is move towards. Take immediate action.
There's no reason you can't. No reason whatsoever.
And there's no reason to wait. Waiting is the enemy to creating life on your terms. So here's the final question. I keep saying that, but I promise it's true this time. What would need to happen, okay, in order for you to work yourself out of your vocation, so that it's no longer even necessary? What would need to occur so that what the deliverable that you're bringing right now is not even necessary? So you're free. You've accomplished your mission. You're free to move on to whatever is next and beautiful in this world for you. What would need to occur there?
Well, oh my gosh, you know what? In what we do, there is so much low-hanging fruit because of so many potential people out there. People would have to. Are you talking about just in my business or just in my whole vocation for others like me?
I guess what I'm asking is really for like if it was like, so if we flip the stats.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if like Gallup said, holy crap, now it's only 20% or 15% of people report dislikes. So that's like, why are you doing that? Like that's like, what are you doing? It's the unpopular thing to do. So the vast majority of human beings are totally in love with how they're using their lives, right? And therefore, there's really no demand for what you're doing right now.
Yeah, I think there would have to be an alignment between high school, college, and this is another of the big things that are missing. Companies, think about it this way: you talk about we're never taught to be mentally tough. We're also never taught how to figure out what career is the right one for us right now. And so what's right for me today may not be right for me in 5 or 10 years, and you have to be okay with that. But so think about it. We don't learn it in high school, and frankly, we wouldn't listen anyway. We don't listen in college, and most college students wouldn't listen anyway. Now we're out in the big bad world. Companies would have to recognize and put their efforts and money behind the idea that if we teach our employees how to manage their careers, how to truly take charge of their careers and own their careers inside our organization and beyond, we as an organization, we would give people the tools to move on when our organization is no longer the best fit for them, and to navigate our organization on their own terms. And that is one big scary prospect for organizations. But as an organization, if you've got 60, 70%, whatever it is, of your particular organization disengaged, it is better for you as an organization in the long run for those people to find their work elsewhere.
So that brings us all full circle back to the whole HR thing, right?
Yeah. Companies, they're like, they truly, okay, Chris, 2008, big recession, right? The general employee relations strategy of companies was just be glad you have a job, sit down and get back to work.
Shut your mouth.
Right? And I remember back then thinking, oh, that is a mistake. Because the pendulum is going to swing the other way. And it has. And so now, your best people, if you're on LinkedIn, you're in play every day. Yeah. It used to be a situation where you had to go put your resume out on a recruiter's website and hope for the best. You are in play. So your best people are the people who know they have choices and they're making the decision to stay because you have given them, you've asked them what they want at work and you're giving it to them. You're giving them possibilities at work. They're going to stay. Yeah. But but the people who are and they're so depressed and they're so down and they're never going to do anything, they're staying and they're not giving you their best. And you can't hit them with a stick and make them give you their best. And so you have to create a culture in which people are free to say, I know you have me in operations. I'd like to talk to you about maybe looking at marketing. And not going, no, go back to operations. That's what we hired you for. We're wasting money. So there has to be a cultural shift inside of organizations as well.
And maybe that cultural shift will be initiated by people adopting what we were talking about, which is not waiting, smashing the box, and thinking about trusting that your desires are powerful, that the mechanics for success are inherent within them, thinking about what you want, answering the question, what do you want less of, what do you want to what do you want to get rid of, what do you want more of, believing that it's available to you, right, and then moving towards taking action.
Yes.
That's
and remember this. Your company wants you until the day they don't. And you need to act accordingly. You need to manage your career the same way. And when I say that, because I speak professionally as well, when I say that to groups, people all start nodding. They're like, that's right. But then, so they understand that it's important that they manage their career. So if it's no longer in the best interests of me and my career to stay at this company, you owe it to yourself to go find the next thing and not wait for them to lay you off, because none of us make good decisions in that moment of panic.
What a perfect ending point. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Julie.
It's been a pleasure, of course.
I applaud you. The work that you're doing, your vocation is so critical. And so, it's so important because, to me, my mission is to reduce the number of people that are settling, struggling, and suffering unnecessarily. We spend more time at our job than anything else in our lives. So you're in the sweet spot of addressing that. So on behalf of the world, I thank you for how you've chosen to use your life and for contributing to heightening the experience, the human experience. And thanks for making time. How do people get in touch with you, Julie?
Our website is thebaukegroup.com. That's TheBauke group.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll put that into the show notes.
Okay.
So to speak.
And if
Julie,
the Boilermakers meet them in the tournament, you and I are going to have a big ass bet going on.
Well, yeah, why don't we do that? We'll take care of that after we hang up. We'll create our wager.
Okay.
Right on.
All right.
All right, Julie, thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, take care.